Hello everybody and welcome to Woopercast. This is episode 5 for May the 25th, 2016. As always, I am your host, Joe Yates, and in this week's episode, I'm going to be discussing a few random things. I don't have any big topic of discussion for this episode, so there's just a few things I want to go over, a few points of discussion I want to make. And let's get started. First thing I want to discuss was a couple of shoutouts, a couple of news points about this channel itself. So about the channel itself, first of all, I have made the SoundCloud page now. All the stuff is up on SoundCloud, or at least it should be. Most of it should be by the time you listen to this. So yay! I'm going to link it down in the description. You want to listen to the backlog over there, you can go ahead and do that. Everything's going to be downloadable for free, so you can listen to it wherever. I'm going to try and put it on different platforms as well, but I'll leave that for another day. For now, if you prefer listening to stuff on SoundCloud, go hit it up. Everything's in the description. Another thing that I'm going to be doing over the next couple of days, I guess, is trying to touch up the channel a bit. You know, now that we're 5 episodes into the podcast, I've gotten a really good reception so far, and thank you to everybody who's been listening to it. It's been really good. But we're actually kind of picking up steam, so I think now is a good time to rebrand a little bit, just fix up the channel art, get a new logo, as cute and all as our little vector art Wooper mascot is. It's also going to involve getting new content on the channel. Like, there's a few other videos that I want to do outside of just the podcast. I want to sort of expand the content that I make a bit. So like you saw with the Vespiquen Zoroark deck analysis last week, I want to start doing more stuff like that. So I'm going to try and get a few more videos up along those lines. Also just try and experiment, see what people like, see what people don't like, because we're still in the early days of the channel, and I do want to sort of tighten its focus, but at the same time get a lot more content on the page and sort of diversify myself from just being the radio guy on the podcast. So yeah, I'm going to probably put up a deck analysis of something, try and get that done on PTCGO as well. That should be a bit of fun. That should be coming this week too. And before we get into any other points of discussion, I also do want to give a quick shout out to a friend of mine, fellow Irish player, Jono. So Jono is a VGC player, and any other Irish players, even TCG ones, you probably will know Jono. So he's an Irish VGC player. He actually, through UK Nats and a recent Premier Challenge, he did manage to get enough points to qualify for the World Championships, which is amazing, so well done to him. Unfortunately though, Jono has an unfortunate history of medical problems, and it does mean that getting to San Francisco for him is much more difficult, much more expensive, especially from Ireland. For the other side of the world, it's very, very difficult. So what his mother did for him was she actually set up a GoFundMe page where everyone can pledge money to help him on his trip to Worlds. And this was going to be where I tell everyone that if you want to go ahead, share the page or something, or donate yourself, that'd be great. But after a single day, the target was €2,500, and at the time recording this, it's been 1 day, and he has raised €3,225, which is just insane. So I actually just want to do a big thank you to the community. When we put our stuff together, we can really create something amazing and really help out somebody else. So I think that's a really good effort on the whole community. So thank you to everybody who supported that campaign. And we'll definitely be looking out for Jono on stream. Alright, so that's going to do it for that. Now, the next point is going to be Karen. Karen's a brand new supporter that just got revealed in Japan, and a lot of people have been talking about her lately. She's kind of significant. So, to get started, I'll just read Karen. Each player shuffles all Pokemon in his or her discard pile into his or her deck. Oh dear, goodbye Night March. Now, the thing about this thing is, it's being released as part of a Japanese tournament promo thing. And I think this means that it'll likely be part of our Steam Siege set. The next set to be coming out over here. And of course, by the time that does come out, Night March will probably be rotated out, so it won't end up being super significant at countering that. But of course, there's still the expanded format to think about. So what kind of implications does this have on people's matchups against Night March and Vespiquen? Well, let's say you have a bad Night March matchup. What you do is you run one copy of Karen, and all of a sudden you have a favourable Night March matchup. It's really that simple. It's a ridiculously hard counter. Not in the same way the Trump card was either. Back in the day, I actually ran my own Trump card in my own Night March list, as crazy as that sounds. Reason being is it shuffled in all my DCE back in, so it was great. I had an infinite number of energy. It was fantastic. And it didn't take up 4 slots like, say, Time Puzzled or Militix did. But the great thing about it was, it also shuffled back in your battle compressors. So it didn't matter that you were getting all your Pokemon back into your deck, because you could just battle compressor them all away again, because you had access to that. Karen's a little bit different, and she's not going to let you do that. She just shuffles in the Pokemon. It's really horrible. You spend 4 battle compressors clearing your deck of Pokemon, you're hitting for 200 damage or something, and then Karen comes along and resets you back to 20 or 0 damage. It's a ridiculously hard counter for Night March. And honestly, looking at its uses past that, I can't see many. It's basically Sacred Ash on steroids, I guess. And it might be useful after Sacred Ash rotates out? But really, it seems like the only purpose that it's being printed for is to destroy Night March. And this brings me on to a good point about what is the significance of Pokemon printing this card. You know, like, here's the thing, we were very vocal about people not liking Night March. I'll get onto this a bit later in the video, but especially when, you know, the recent batch of states, this year's state championships, the first sort of week or two of them, was really Night March's peak of hate. People really did not like playing against it. Nobody knew how to beat it. In America, I want to point this out. In Europe, we got this covered. We're fine in Europe. This is mostly an American problem. But over there, it was dominating every single tournament it entered. And people did not like it. People were very, very vocal about how much they hated Night March. And apparently, Pokemon were listening to that. Because they printed a card that can beat Night March entirely on its own. Which is... I think it's really interesting that Pokemon have made this decision based on what the community was saying and what the community was feeling at that time. You can't... Yes, of course, you can argue it's a bit late because Night March will be out of print by the time Karen comes around. But it does... Ignoring that, Pokemon have printed a card that seems to have very few uses outside of addressing a big complaint of the community. It's really interesting when you think about it that way. You know, we saw things like the Trump card ban, and we saw things like the Shiftry ban that happened because people were being so vocal about their hatred for a certain card. And Pokemon addressed those complaints too. And it seems like they've addressed this complaint in a much more direct way as opposed to just saying, right, we're going to ban Lampent or something like that. Or ban Battle Compressor or put it on a coin flip. I don't know why people thought that would be a good idea. But, yeah. I think it's really interesting the Pokemon... It makes you think, though, like, what else are Pokemon going to address that the community has issues with? You know, we've said the Battle Compressor is a big problem. I think Karen's kind of an answer to that, too, in a way. I mean, maybe people are angry at Yveltal having an efficient Maxi engine or something. I don't think anybody is, but, you know, I don't think anyone's going to call for a Battle Compressor ban now that Karen's a thing. But long story short, if you have an issue with something in Pokemon, apparently get a lot of people behind you and shout about it on Verbank, because they're going to hear you and they're going to address it, apparently. I have been mentioning how this beats Night March single-handedly a lot at the moment. And I want to point out, of course, it also beats Vespiquen in the same way. Probably, arguably less so, because Vespiquen runs a lot of techs like Zoroark that don't rely on Pokemon in the discard pile, so it kind of gets around... It can get around that by running other things, I guess. But Vespiquen Vileplume in particular would be very hurt by this card, especially since it's a supporter. You know, you're not going to be able to lock it out of their hand. But of course, by the time Karen comes out, Battle Compressor will be out of print. Vespiquen Vileplume really needs Battle Compressor to use it, so it's irrelevant again. But we did, of course, get that championship set information that, you know, in Japan they're reprinting Night March and they're reprinting Battle Compressor and all that crazy stuff. So if that did ever come our way, don't worry, Night March haters, you've already got an answer to it. So make what you will of this. The other point I wanted to make about Karen is, why did they pick Karen for the card? She's a very weird trainer to choose, and I'm not sure I'm entirely comfortable with it, to be honest. Alright, so we look at like the latest generations of games, and we look at all of the gym leaders that we've had. You know, Watson, he's great. He's significant to the storyline. You've got your dad, the normal type gym leader in Oras. He's pretty cool. You've got, who else? You've got Xynthia from XY. Again, a very significant character to the story that has not been represented in TCG at all, which is kind of strange. But Karen, on the other hand, is Karen relevant in Pokemon at this point in time? Well, thanks to Bulbapedia, I am able to tell you that Karen is an Elite Four member from Generation 2, from Pokemon Silver and Gold. That's a very weird... She's not even the champion of those games. It's not even like picking Lance. It's just a very weird choice to put in as this supporter for this purpose. I'm not entirely sure why they chose Karen. Is she a fan favorite? Am I missing something like that? I personally had not heard of her at all until I saw this card. So I don't know. I'm very confused as to why they chose Karen for this particular role. I think personally, I'd really like to see a supporter of Nia from Pokken Tournament. I don't know what it would do. Even if I filled the same role as Karen, I'd be fine with that. Maybe it'd just be like, I don't know, search your deck for a Weavile and fail it or something like that. Because when they brought out Bridget, I think that was really cool that they decided to pick someone who was really removed from the franchise in a really niche way. You know, she's only part of Pokebank on the 3DS app. So I thought it was very cool that they decided to pick her for that role and just choose someone a little bit more obscure. And I think Nia will be a great choice for a supporter in the future. So if you ever see a Nia supporter, know that I'm going hype somewhere. But anyway, I think that's going to do it for our discussion on Karen. Long story short, it's a very important card if Night March ever gets big and expanded. Which it could be. Alright, moving on to the next point of discussion that I wanted to talk about. And that is, I'm going to round up XY to Breakpoint. Because Fates Collide is coming out very soon. Fates Collide is going to be tournament legal soon, I should say. And that means that it's going to mark the end of the XY to Breakpoint format. So I think now is a good time to look back at it, see what was big, what underperformed, what performed well, and kind of talk about what was truly the best deck in that format. First of all, quick shout out to both Andrew Wambolt and David Hockman for compiling results, lists, all that kind of stuff of recent tournaments from all around the world, from all around Europe, all around America. And I'm going to link their blogs, the Charizard Lounge and Mudkip Shore, respectively, in the description below, so you can check out results for yourself if you want to as well. That's where I'm getting all my information from for the next segment. So we're going to start off back at American States. And in American States, of course, like I mentioned earlier, Night March was kind of very, very popular. Very, very, very popular, in fact. And led to an awful lot of outcry. It was largely countered by things like Vespiquen and Vileplume, and these two decks really sort of dominated the standard format for the time being. They were both very powerful, they both relied on non-EXs, both very quick, both dealing high damage, and both just having some sort of annoying aspect to it, whether Night March being, their time puzzle shenanigans, Vespiquen being Vileplume locking you in. And for the longest time, it was just these two decks really sort of going at it one another. And a lot of the reason that people were playing Vespiquen and Vileplume in the first place was because, well, you win the coin flip, you beat Night March. And that, considering most of the decks were Night March at the time, that was very significant, actually. Aside from those two things, Yveltal was still kind of a good deck. YZG is Yveltal's really never not going to be a good pick. Seismitoad Giratina was also a kind of good pick, seeing that it had answers for both Night March and Vespiquen Vileplume. In Giratina EX just being a very good answer to both of those things. Trevenant Break also has done pretty well. Just kind of consistently throughout the meta. So that was also just something to bear in mind. I think, again, Trevenant Break having good matchup against Night March is that you look at Night March being the top deck, and then you look at all the decks underneath it, and it's like, oh look, they're all decks that have good Night March matchups. And I think it really controlled the meta from that standpoint, and really made it so that you couldn't play a deck with a bad Night March matchup whatsoever. That was suicide. One thing I haven't mentioned yet, though, is Greninja Break. And I think the really interesting thing about it is it took a while for Greninja to actually get some steam. We know, like the early days with Greninja, we saw people running lists with things like Octillery and multiple Floatstones. We saw people running Shaman in it. We saw people running Archie in it. And it was, looking back at that, it's so ugly, isn't it? I mean, if you look at any of the tournament-winning lists, heck, check out Rick Cherry's top 4 list, or was it top 8? top 8 or top 4 list from UK Nats actually 2 weekends ago. If you look at that, that's a great example of just kind of how Greninja has evolved over the course of the format and how people have just learned to play it. It's really interesting, actually. Looking at the Greninja list now, and it's something that we couldn't even consider, I think, back in the first week of Breakpoint being released. We've got things like 1 or no copies of the XY Greninja, which everyone decided, right, we're going to want at least 2, if not 3 of these ones. That thing shot up in price really quickly, and now it's like, you know what, you can get away with running absolutely none of them. We saw people running 2 breaks at the start. Now anyone running less than 3 is doing it wrong. We saw people running huge builds with lots of Wally and lots of Archie, and now people have cut those things all together because there's no point in them. On top of that, we're also seeing much higher counts of Rough Seas. We're seeing people run Promo Jirachi. It's become a staple in the deck, in fact. People are really countering even the mirror match by running things like Delinquent and things like Durant to take care of the mirror match, which is otherwise extremely boring. We've gone from having these really super basic lists to having these incredibly fleshed out, really high-level playlists. And I think the evolution of Greninja along this format has been one of the most interesting things to actually watch. Nobody's running Octillery anymore. Nobody cares about drawing up to 5. It doesn't matter. You have to run 2 extra float stones. Who wants that? You got an extra target on your bench. Who wants that? It's sort of really turned Greninja into an extremely powerful deck, and one that I think I would consider the best deck of that format. Now the Nats results are kind of disproving me, given that, let me just check what was top 8 in France. Yeah, we get to France. We have Frederic Lesage finishing 4th with Greninja in French Nats this year. We had Rick Cherry, finishing in top 8 with his Greninja list this year. Look to German Nats, nobody made top 8 with Greninja. So I know it seems a bit weird me saying, oh, Greninja is the best deck in format, but I think really under the right control, with the right list and a lot of practice, you can beat anything with Frogs. Even the fact that it can really exploit multiple copies of Ace Trainer is something that I think only that deck can do, and that in itself is extremely powerful. But we're also looking at a lot of Trevenant showing up in Nats as well in the top 8s. So we have Daniel Melrose made top 4 in UK with Trevenant. In France we have Sylvain de la Compe with Trevenant in top 2. And over in Germany, Fatih Akdemir made top 2 with Trevenant as well. So again, and I think a lot of this is to do with the fact that every Trevenant player I asked said that they considered Greninja to basically be almost an auto win. And I think that has to contribute a lot to Trevenant's success over Nats so far, is that people really did like their Greninja matchup with it. Which seems weird given that they have, a lot of Greninja lists are running like 4 copies of Rough Seas to heal off Silent Fear over and over again. But I think the fact is turn 1 item lock against it is just way too strong, especially when you can combine that with lots of judges and things like that. Although, having said that, Greninja's success still saw people play less Seismitoad Giratina, especially in the UK. There was barely any Seismitoad Giratina across the whole boards. I don't think I saw one the entire day across 192 players, which is really saying something given how popular that deck used to be. So Greninja completely kind of kept that one out. But then we kind of look at the top 8 in France again. We've got Fabien Puyol with Seismitoad Tina. We have in German top 8, we have where is it now? A Toadina made top 4. And again, if you look at that Toadina list, he's actually running a Latios EX. And the reason is so that you beat Greninja because you can attack with the turn 1 and just dong Froakies. And that's the entire strategy against Greninja with that deck. So even though, like I said, Greninja isn't having the huge presence in the top 8s of Nats that I would have expected, it's still forcing people to play lists that beat Greninja. It's still forcing people to change their lists in order that they can beat Greninja, because whether it makes top 8 or not, it's going to be there on the day, and it's still a huge presence, and it greatly affects the way people build their decks. I think Greninja's presence in itself is just such a significant factor for XY to be KP. The other thing that I want to point out is it wasn't featured at all in the top 8 of UK, and it isn't featured at all in the top 8 of France. Sorry, by the way, these are the only national championships that I have in front of me, but I'm still going with this. These are probably the most attended ones, at least. But in German top 8, we have seen 2 top 8 finishes, and the overall champion, we're running Turbo Toad. What even is Turbo Toad? Well, a while back, a Brazilian player named Gabriel Samedo, this is back in the 4th of May, he's posted a 60-card article about Turbo Toad. And it's about how he took 2nd place at Sao Paulo Regionals, all the way down in Brazil. I love the Brazilian meta, by the way. Those guys love playing like Regirock from Ancient Origins. They make crazy decks down there. I think it's a great place for the Pokemon metagame. But anyway, moving on. This guy posts his full list and a good analysis, a really great article. I'm going to link this article in the description because it's a fantastic article. He gives a great analysis of the deck and his choices with it about Turbo Toad. And we're seeing things that we haven't seen in standard format almost ever. We're seeing 2 copies of Manaphy EX. We're seeing an Aurorus EX. We're seeing 4 Max Elixir combined with 4 Energy Switch. It's a very strange deck. But he goes into depth and claims that, you know what, this deck can actually have a lot of really, really good matchups across the board. And, well, it turns out he was right because it made 3 of the top 8 finishes in Germany. And I think a lot of this is down to the fact that nobody was really expecting it. I saw a couple of people playing it in the UK, but no one doing anything super significant with it. And I think in the UK especially, there was a lot of Vespiquen Vileplume, which is something this deck can't really handle. So I think the one really cool thing about this is just how it kind of really sprung up out of nowhere at the end of the format. Like, nobody picked up on it for some reason, except this one dude. And it really just spread from there. Now everyone's doing deck analysis of it all over YouTube. People are saying, holy shit, why didn't we think of this earlier? It's it's extremely powerful, actually. And it's just something that's kind of been, forgive the pun, but under the water for all this time. So I know Chris O in his winner's interview said that he didn't see this being a great pick going forward because people will be expecting it. But if we think back to why it made such a huge present in Germany, we're looking at, in the UK, Vespiquen Vileplume won. Big presence. Everyone knows about it now. Everyone thinks, you know what, this is going to be a popular deck. So people kind of, in a way that puts you off playing it for Germany, because people are going to be countering for it. It's also just a completely different meta game to the UK, and there really wasn't much Vespiquen at all. And with no Vespiquen, Toad can be allowed to shine. Toad can be allowed to do Toad things and whatever it wants. Even in a deck that declares Grenade Hammer more often than it declares Quaking Punch. So I think that's just a really interesting story as to how that sort of came up. It looks like it has a great Trevenant matchup too, and like I was saying about Trevenant having a good presence, it has a pretty cool Greninja matchup as well. The Aurorus EX actually helps out in the Greninja matchup a lot. Again, read the article if you want more information on that. It's great. And finally, to close it off though, everyone's favourite, Night March, has still had a significant presence, if not the most presence, in all of these, in all of the Nats results. We look to the UK, and there's 2 Night March lists in the top 8 of their Nats. We look to France, and there's 1, 2, 3 Night March lists, including the overall winner in the top 8. We look to Germany, and there's 2 Night March lists in the top 8. So no matter where you go, Night March is still a good pick. And if you look at the lists for those Night March decks, they're also like really different to each other. You know, there's plenty of variants, and there's plenty, like in the UK, both the lists that topped were running a 1/1 Vespiquen line. I think the one that topped in France was running a pretty traditional list. However, I think Night March also won in the Belgium National Championships. It was a very strange list, running Delinquent of all things. And then we switch over to the German top 8s, the German Night March lists. We've got the variants with no Acrobike, which, in case anyone was wondering, that is the correct variant to run. Acrobike is terrible. I'm pretty sure someone was running a 1/1 Militic line as well, in addition to the 4-time puzzles in some top 8 of some nationals. You know, I think it's a very diverse deck, and people are building it to suit themselves and their own metagames. So, no matter what you think about it, arguably Night March was the most diverse deck. But yeah, that's going to do it for this week. I know this has been a really short episode, and I apologize for that. But as for next week, I want to get an interview going. or just a discussion going with a guest on the show. I think that could be cool. I've got a few ideas in my head. So I don't want to spoil anything just yet, but do look forward to that. So thank you very much for watching. This has been Woopercast. I've been your host, Joe Yates. We'll be back here every Wednesday at 5 p.m. British Standard Time. Don't forget to check us out on SoundCloud. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you next time.